Typhoon Kalmaegi is making landfall right now in the southern portions of the Philippines as a Category 2 typhoon on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale. A very strong typhoon making landfall here, I believe the strongest of the year so far, as it moves inland here into portions of the Visayas region of the Philippines. Right now, it's got winds of 110 miles per hour, that's 175 kilometers per hour in 1 minute sustained winds, and a pressure of 960 millibars, moving due west at 12 miles per hour, 90 kilometers per hour, and of course, rightfully so, we are code red for the storm right now. A very strong typhoon moving into the Visayas region right now, currently located at 10.7 degrees north, 125.9 degrees east, which is only 6 miles away from Hanahan Island, 72 from Tacloban City, 91 from Ormoc City, 139 from Cebu, and 428 from Manila. Those numbers are a few minutes out of date, but the storm either way is moving inland right now as a very strong typhoon and could briefly reach Category 3 in the next few hours before it makes landfall, but I really don't think it's going to happen. Either way, the difference between 110 and 115 miles per hour, very, very little. Significant impacts already taking place. The typhoon mainly has a fairly circular wind field. It is a very moderately sized storm as far as these storms go here in the Western Pacific. Rightfully so, Senior 4 warnings are in effect for portions of Cebu, Leyte, Samar, and Dinagat Islands. Senior 3 warnings are in effect for portions of the central Philippines as well, and Senior 2 and Senior 1 warnings also surround that. I don't believe that there's any Senior warnings for Manila at this time being. If they did have any, it would probably be only a Signal 1 warning. Really don't think that Manila's really be getting too much in terms of this typhoon that remains south of there. So Kalmaegi is a very intense typhoon and looks to produce up to 400 millimeters of rainfall over the next 24 to 36 hours as it moves through the Philippines. These kind of rainfalls are very significant and can lead to very significant loss of property and maybe even some fatalities. Of course, with the storm also being a Category 2 storm, some strong winds are also going to result from this. So, and wind gusts could eventually get in excess of 130 miles per hour. So those kind of winds can lead to some significant property damage and could lead to some significant damage as well. We're also going to be seeing similar impacts for Vietnam in about 3 to 4 days' time. The storm is going to make landfall there, probably around a similar intensity from what it is right now. So the chart forecast: a bit of weakening as it moves through Luzon, the Visayas region here. Once it gets into the South China Sea, re-strengthening. Our forecast shows 120 miles per hour for 2 forecast points here. Would not surprise me to see a higher peak in between that. It does also show that the storm make landfall as a Category 3. Probably not going to happen. Probably going to see a little bit of a downturn in intensity as it makes landfall. Right now, I'd probably say 110 miles per hour landfall would be my forecast for Vietnam. Either way, quick weakening as it moves inland into Vietnam, as is standard for these strong storms. GWT's forecast calls for a 115 mile per hour peak in the South China Sea. Maybe a little bit stronger than that. Obviously, it might peak in between some forecast points. We'll have to wait and see on how strong this storm needs to get, but the forecast has stated that the storm would its penultimate peak intensity in the South China Sea. Remains to be seen how strong it will get, though. Fairly certain it won't be anywhere near Vietnam, though. It will weaken as it comes in. So, the satellite estimate side of things, MSU, of course, off the deep end, down at tropical storm intensity is nowhere near that. JWC is running a little bit lower, that has to be said, given the satellite presentation. They're only at 90 miles per hour right now, but we do think that it is a fair bit stronger than that, given the satellite presentation and microwave passes that we've been seeing. It's got a very strong core to it right now as it moves into the Visayas region of the Philippines. Most model plots indicating that the storm is going to move pretty much due west over the next 24 hours. Then after that, maybe a slight northerly component, maybe moving up towards the west-northwest, pretty standardized pace as it moves towards Vietnam. Though still a little bit of question marks remain on where does that landfall occur. Remains to be seen definitely how strong too. You can see some of those model runs. That northern outlier there does take the storm below 950 millibars. Probably would indicate a mid to high Category 3. Though the most of the high resolution model runs, think of those HWRF and the HFSA model runs. Those are indicating a real strong storm. Think of a Category 3 to Category 4. This is fairly standard for early November in the South China Sea. Although most model runs do indicate some weakening as the storm comes in, primarily due to an increase in wind shear, which will take place some weakening trends as the storm comes in. Do not take that weakening trend though lightly for Vietnam though. it is still going to be extremely dangerous as it comes in here, and it is going to be probably still a Category 2 at least as it comes in here, and still can cause significant damage. Typhoon Kalmaegi, either way, is going to move through the Philippines in the next 24 to 36 hours. The GEFS, this is the Canadian model run, if I don't stand myself mistaken, a little bit weaker though. You can see it was initialized a little bit earlier on, so it is still playing catch up with the storm's current intensity. But either way, you can see it is fairly certain on where the storm is going to go as well. So we have pretty decent confidence on where the storm is going to go. It's just that intensity. How strong that the storm going to get? We were originally thinking it was only going to be a low Category 2 at this point. Obviously, it's a little bit stronger than that based on the satellite appearance. So we'll have to wait and see on how strong the storm will get, at least how it's trying to see. There is still some wiggle room, as I've been saying. You know, our current forecast is 120, 125 miles per hour. Maybe to get up to Category 4 briefly. We'll have to wait and see on that, though. Of course, those weakening trends is going to be the forecast as the storm goes into the areas of Vietnam. Water temperatures, you'll see here in just a second, either way, are very supportive of any development. And a little bit of a question mark, does it re-intensify as it moves through that gap in the Philippines there? I'm not sure what that bay is called, I apologize. But does it regain some strength as it moves through those areas? Only time will tell. Has to be seen how land interaction will erode that core, if at all. You know, we've had some storms that have had no problem intensifying over the Philippines. Think of that storm. I think it was Dujen in late 2015. I forget what that storm's name was. Of course, you had a storm like that when it was able to re-strengthen over those conditions. Although some typhoons have also had their core completely collapse over these islands. We'll have to wait and see, though. Water temperature, as I was alluding to, more than enough to sustain development all the way through to Vietnam. Not really going to be an issue at all. Really basin-wide here across the Western Pacific. Although we are getting into that secondary season. Although looking at it now, this map was from October, so I imagine that the water temperatures are pretty much the same. Maybe a little bit cooler than that, but either way, still warm enough probably to sustain development across the board here across the Western Pacific. Some of the observation plots aren't really going to be telling us very much. Not really a whole lot to go by in terms of stations here in the Philippines, unfortunately. So we'll have to wait and see, though, what sort of observations plots get over the next few hours. I imagine that there's probably some observation stations that will be useful for us for reanalysis as the storm moves inland here into the Visayas region of the Philippines as a Category 2 typhoon. Having a look at the RAM diagnostic plots here, you can see model runs are fairly consistent and very locked in on where the storm is going to go. As I said earlier, due west for the next 24 hours or so, then making a gradual west-northwest return, and then pretty much staying on that heading pretty much right up until Vietnam. Only question is, how strong will it get? There is still some question marks, as I've been alluding to, of course. Model runs are indicating that the storm will peak right about now, right as it's moving into the Philippines. Gradual decrease in strength, of course, due to land interaction. But how strong does it get afterwards? You have the HAFSA going all out, calling for a 145 mile per hour peak. Although you got the HWF up at a high Category 3, GFS up at a high Category 2. Wind shear is going to be a little bit of a problem, though, has to be said. Though might support those colder cloud tops. Remains to be seen exactly how strong that wind shear will get in the South China Sea. You've got the HWRF indicating maybe moderate amounts, the HAFS forecasting lower amounts. Maybe something to watch out for. Either way, water temperatures across the board, not going to be a problem at all. You see it's got water temperature of 30 degrees Celsius underneath the storm right now. More than enough to sustain any general development. But once it gets into the South China Sea, 29 degrees Celsius. Still warm enough. Relative humidity, also not a problem. Looking at the radar imagery here, unfortunately it's not getting the real core of the storm, but you can see those heavy outer rain bands do extend very far out from the storm center of circulation. Remains to be seen exactly how strong or how much rainfall falls underneath those bands, but it's those bands that can extend the rainfall threat far, far away from the storm center. And that's going to be a consistent trend with Kalmaegi as it moves through the Philippines and into Vietnam too. You'll see these rain bands and out far, far away from the center of circulation. So it's not just that centralized core that we need to focus on for threats with Kalmaegi. It's going to send out farther from the storm center. And you can see those on the satellite imagery side of things up near Manila. Those higher cloud tops, even just over the center of circulation. Everywhere you see here is heavy rainfall falling over the Philippines, and we know that these heavy rainfall storms this late in the season can promote a very, very bad threat for the Philippines, especially this late in the season. Do not let the storm caught off guard, even with it moving inland right now. Either way, a very substantial rainfall threat and wind threat with Typhoon Kalmaegi moving into the Visayas region of the Philippines right now as a Category 2 typhoon on the adverse temperature wind scale. How strong will it get in the South China Sea? Only time will tell, but either way, Philippines, take shelter now as Typhoon Kalmaegi is moving through.